Thank you for organizing this conference. It's a theme that's quite close to my heart. Not mainly because I'm so concerned about the fate of mankind and so on, but more like for having experienced this problem directly as a quite relatively low-paid university lecturer. I was, even this summer trying to find an affordable place to live and couldn't really find one. It's something that I think about a lot. But I'm still quite fine, so I can only imagine these people who have even lower salaries. Maybe the first question would be to Anneli, is there anything peculiar to these problems in Estonia, or is it the same mechanisms as all over the world?
For sure, there are some general trends that unite all the countries, but it rather depends on the modes of public intervention. As in your presentation, you mentioned the land policy, and that's probably one of the really major issues that brings change to the situation where housing is not purely a profit issue and commodity. And yes. So we have examples from Helsinki, for example, where the situation is quite different from the countries in Eastern Europe, where the private the market processes are guiding the whole dynamics on the housing market. So that's.
I think, if I may, because I come originally from Romania, and we have the same. In 1989, everyone became owner of the apartment in which they lived. So including my parents, that ugly thing that I showed you, they became owners overnight. And Romania is a country of owners, and private property is holy. You cannot touch it. I think it's maybe similar in Estonia. In Belgium is also a country of owners, but for other reasons. Ownership, private property, is interwoven with the fiscal, with the whole financial system in Belgium. It's the pension of people. It's so next to investment funds that buy housing to then rent them or sell them or whatever, you have people, citizens who buy apartments not to live in them but to rent them. You see, just to make money. That's their pension. So I think the crisis, the big challenges are the same everywhere, but you have these differences per country depending on the percentage of ownership, the history, the fiscal system.
So. Maybe there are very many similarities among these Eastern European bloc, I guess. Maybe, my next question is meant as a kind of a provocation. So, maybe some are offended by this parallel. I love you, architects. Yesterday, or some days ago even, my imagination conjured to me this scene of a conference of an Estonian association of plumbers discussing the same question. And somehow it seemed absurd, but it's not absurd to discuss it here. So I'm wondering. Is it still this vestige of the idea of an architect in the image of, I don't know, Ayn Rand's Fountainhead, this idea of a master solver who can solve everything, that's kind of hidden behind this question that we can still attempt to solve everything? Because as we saw from the first presentation, but also Oana's presentation, the solutions or the reasons behind this problem are firstly political, and secondly they have to do with regulations and policies, and secondly they have to do with land prices, and so on and so on, which are things that architects can't really influence too much. But still, we are discussing these things here. So,
yeah, but I mean, if you would limit the discussion to things you can influence, you would have a pretty damn short conference, no? I mean, isn't that the essence of Western democracy, that we talk about, everything with ultimately an ability to influence very little? The alternative is you don't talk about it at all. So I don't think one necessarily implicates the others, and I would love nothing more, in fact, than plumbers talking about architecture. I would happily invite them, even though they're unable to influence the architecture in which they might do their plumbing. I think that sort of intellectual promiscuity is the oxygen of all of us. No.
I think it's to quote an article that you wrote some years ago. I believe that we all have a kind of a mission. You become architect. This is I know I'm very naive now, but you have a kind of a mission. As I said, I see myself as a doctor, really a generalist one. So I'm not an expert in anything. I think we know a little bit of everything and nothing very well of one thing. We architects, but so I like to see myself as a doctor, right? We fix problems. We look at also for me, buildings are organisms. So really, like I see buildings as a body. It's systems. Right, so and then you have deontology. You have a kind of a responsibility. For instance, in Belgium, just to say, to be very pragmatic, we have 10-year liability for every building that we design. I pay 0.2% insurance of the built volume in 1 year, insurance money, so that they cover me when there is something. So it's I congratulate the plumbers, and I think we need them absolutely. Unless there will be a visionary plumber that will just turn everything upside down. For now, I expect from architects to be busy with societal issues and feel responsible.
I was thinking what I said. I think there is a trend on the whole. The less power you have, the more you have a mission. I think that is almost a sort of biological correction of man, and with architects don't have a lot of power, so they have a lot of mission. A lot of very wealthy business people who could have a lot of power are very, very silent. There's certain exceptions, but I mean, we some of the richest people we don't even know. And I think in a weird way, the politician is probably the ultimate personification of the ultimate mission and a complete lack of power, which is why they always claim success of the economy, over which they have no influence, as their own, and they claim it as their success, and that decides the basis of election. The last thing they can possibly influence is their success rate, and that's when they win. So it's a complete game of chance. And I think that's, I don't know. But I mean, on the other hand, if people with a lot of power would have a mission, there's some historical examples of derailment which I wouldn't kind of encroach in a hurry on as well. Oh, it's just a thought.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am not an architect, so I don't really know how much power there is. But Yeah, I can imagine that that the role of architect also depends on this context or the frames that are set. So by the initiator of the project, whether this is the community or local government, and the type of solution which is provided by the architect, it can really be engaging people, be like inclusive, be more affordable project if this is designed in a particular way, like with the co-used spaces and make it in the way that makes it more affordable. But it probably depends on what is the demand and what are the initial conditions for the architects.
Come on, it's the power of imagination. We do have power. We can imagine things. And if we manage to communicate, then we can maybe inspire, no? I mean, I'm trying to be a bit positive. I can't convince him.
Oh, you were talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm very positive.
So, in these matters, there is this ever-present dodging of responsibility, in a sense. I mean, there are, for example, social scientists who present us with these underlying problems and processes overall, but they perhaps cannot get their hands dirty, so someone else has to get their hands dirty. Architects, they say that maybe we can, of course, deal with these things, but the developers don't want to. And the developers are saying, yeah, we could really do these things, but our clients don't want to. And so there are politicians and city officials, each have their own reasons to dodge the responsibility to someone else. And the question is, are there any chance, is there any chance to kind of break this circle? For example, should more architectural offices become developers, for example, or what would be the option to kind of break this state of things?
I can give the example of Belgium. That is really, as you probably know, it became a bit of a hotspot for architecture. I'm very honored to be there this time. I'm an immigrant, so I just happened to be at the right moment in that country. And it's all thanks to, I try to explain a little bit to this government architects that really guard the quality, and they also do research by design. So it's not one person. It's a team of 16, 20 people. And then you have the Flanders government architect, you have the Brussels is a region also, the Brussels region government architect. And now you have more and more city architects who are different than, we also have city architects in Romania, but they just sign papers. No, these people, they do research by design. They have a team of people. And then based on this research, then they help write good competition briefs. The competitions are being organized by the public authorities, and the team of the government architect is then present in the jury. And they play a very important role to translate, if you want, the proposals of the different teams, to translate a little bit this complexity that is sometimes in the project. It's not easy to understand for someone who is not practicing architecture every single day. So they play a very important role, and they have an independent position, which is very threatened, of course. There is a lot of pressure on their position, and then we see fluctuations with every mandate. But it exists already for more than 20 years, this institution, and it works. We see the results. It's really objective. So that's a possibility.
Yeah, well, I think we can't be so educated each one of us. There needs to be this kind of speciality, like who is the architect and planner, and sociologist, but it's rather the teamwork and then communication and this kind of events where there are like developers, architects, spatial planners coming together. This is kind of a nice shared space for sharing the knowledge on it and working in teams. Is what you mentioned. It's definitely something that is giving the good results. And this kind of like open competitions for social housing projects where there are planners in the team and also community members in the team, so that architects are like advocates or somehow just being like guiding the process and then facilitating the process, but not deciding about the results.
But just so you know, in Brussels, the government architect also helps organizing private competitions for private developers. So for projects bigger than 5,000 square meters, as a private developer, you are obliged to collaborate with the government architect. So then you have these competitions, which of course they are a lot smoother because they are not complying to the law for public tenders. So then it goes somehow faster or easier, let's say. But there are proper competitions with criteria, quality criteria, and we also participate to that. So it's both for the public sector and the private sector. And in Belgium, it is forbidden. You cannot be, as an architect, you cannot be developer, or you can be a real estate developer if you don't sell before the building is there. You can only sell when the building is there, because in Belgium we have this triangle: architect, client, and contractor, construction company. This triangle, and you as an architect, you have to defend the client, and you cannot mix. I see. The roles, let's say. Yeah.
Have you, as in your office, ever had this thought of becoming or trying out developing, or have you?
Yeah, many times, but I think there is something very tricky about it, because let's say as an architect you have a certain space of freedom, and that space of freedom, in my experience, is partly down to the possibility to be a little bit oblivious to money. You know, to cultivate, you know, a sort of a disdain about money, and you know, responsibility is best carried when you think about it as little as possible, because otherwise it becomes like making love on camera. You know, it's very tempting in a way. You know, I am privy to the amount of money that is made off our projects, you know, in certain cases. And if we would be given one small apartment in one of the things we did, for instance, in the UK, it would amount to more than our entire fee. And it would appreciate in value in a way that, you know, money and currency doesn't, because that only has inflation correction. So there's a very tempting model, but I think, you know, we're all human. In the end, we too are human. We too are prone, you know, to be corrupted when the opportunity to be corrupted presents itself. I'm under no illusion, you know, and I think we would very quickly fall victim to what we blame others for ourselves, and thereby forego the possibility to blame them. You know, and I think there is something about, you know, there are certain types of politics that love conflicts of interests, and they thrive on them because it, you know, it makes things very, very one-dimensional. But I think there is something to be said for architecture being part of a system of checks and balances. So we've thought about it, we've even theorized it, but we've never really done it. I think Bofill, at some point in Spain, his father, the father of Bofill Senior, was a major contractor, and his son became an architect, and he, I think, acted as a property developer. Nearly went bankrupt over it a couple of times. I mean, architects are notoriously bad with money, so it probably would amount to suicide as well if we were to go down that route, I'm pretty sure. But I think apart from that, I think there is something to be said from somehow cultivating a bit of a distance.
I'm curious about the presentations we will hear in the afternoon, because I think we will hear more about such examples in which architects are involved. I know that there are in Berlin this Baugruppe in which the architects are an architect and one of the members of the group. So I'm curious how that will be presented.
Yeah, me too. So, like with the solutions to climate warming, often the proposed solutions to the problems of affordability are also either too large or too small. When they are too large, then they are nice for political slogans, or maybe they also belong to these wet dreams of some architects. But they are too general and too vague to be realizable. And the two small solutions are nice to include in your presentations and for showing that you are perhaps a very conscious architect, but actually they tend to not have too much of an impact overall. So, in your opinion, what should be a viable strategy of attaining these large-scale or larger-scale impacts that is actually needed in these matters? Is it still the case that one should proceed case by case and hope that maybe good examples would be picked up by others, or should one go directly to these large-scale solutions in these cases?
Probably both. What I want to say with that is that it's actually very sad what I'm going to say, but we see that we need a few natural disasters.
Yeah, absolutely. Seriously. No, I agree.
To advance. And I can give you, for instance, what happened now in Valencia. It's, we'll see what will be the outcome, but I can give you a much more modest example, is the floodings 2 or 3 summers ago. You had floodings in Germany and in Belgium, and with quite some destruction, and several people even died. We were in the middle of working on this new building code of Brussels, the urban regulations of Brussels, having as a first chapter the open space. And we had already proposed that before the floodings, and the public authority, everyone was like, what on earth? This is a building code, so it's about buildings, and you want to start with the open space. How is that? And then the floodings happened, and then they realized that we really need land in the city, permeable for rainwater, so that it can have a place to go, that we need land for trees, that they saw later on, for trees, so that we can cool our cities. Belgium, it's becoming hotter and hotter. I mean, I perceive this as someone who arrived there more than 20 years ago. So the moment that the floodings happened, everyone agreed. There was unanimity. Of course, the open space should be the first chapter in the urban regulations of a Brussels that we want to be resilient, I mean, to survive natural disasters. And it's very sad, but I think we will have several disasters like this, and things will happen.
I think none of the floods were big enough, by the way. I think what we need is the Great Flood. You know, the European Union, a benign form of leaderless politics emerged after World War II, after a global war with 100 million dead. That's when the type of policies emerged that embraced, civil behaviors between leaders. You need big disasters. I think what will happen is the following. I'm always mesmerized at the supposed scale of the problem and the scale of the interventions that are being proposed. You look at any sustainability award, you see the winners, you see the buildings, and you think, really? Is this going to save us? So you need pretty major disasters. Every climate conference so far starts with an opening statement that holds the admission that the aims of the previous climate conference weren't made. Sorry. And the next one. And so it's quite clear, we're not going to stop at 1.5 degrees global warming. We're not. The writing is on the wall very clearly. And, no amount of sustainability awards is going to stop us from getting there. The world will heat up to 2.5, 3, 4, possibly 6 degrees. That will happen because our whole economic model is based on growth.
Yeah.
The imperative to growth fosters all the instincts exactly opposite to the instincts we should cultivate. Growth is the opposite of moderation, which is what we need, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a twofold thing. Of course, we shouldn't contribute to the problem. And in that sense, I guess all sustainable building efforts are fine, provided they're sensible. But on the other hand, architecture needs a new avant-garde. It needs a new vanguard, which invents the type of architecture which will allow us to coexist with the disasters that will happen and that will become worse. I'm always, some of the fantasies of the 1960s, like floating cities, moving cities, giant capsules, some of that abject phantasmagoria may become all too relevant once again. And, what is modern architecture but a space of dystopian imagination in the face of a demographic explosion? That was a demographic explosion. It created the most horrible architecture, frowned upon, etc., etc. Nevertheless, it was that modern architecture that, in a way, elevated mankind in far greater numbers to far greater equality. It was the prospect of an imminent disaster that inspired an avant-garde. I think climate change could do the same thing today and isn't. Instead you get architects, who ride that diesel motorcycle on the weekend, and on Monday they write the sustainability. We're greatly committed to the cause of sustainability in our office. And there they go. And that is the totally hypocritical state of denial. Not even a state of hypocrisy, but the ostrich is the perfect metaphor, I think, for the way we are confronting climate change.
But also what you said about actually not building new stuff anymore.
If we don't build any new stuff anymore, we will have to work with what we have.
Yes.
So if we put a stop to new, it's so logical. I mean, you wonder sometimes, it's so obvious. Why doesn't it happen? You stop building, then you have to stop demolishing. You will simply reuse everything, but it needs an imperative to do the one to trigger the other. And currently, our whole answer to the housing crisis is build. In East Germany, they demolished the amount of substance that exactly equals the shortage they have today. It is ridiculous. And these things, and nobody talks about it, because all the vested interests there are serious vested interests in the way currently of doing the logical thing.
But you can start within the system. You can start with the logic, within the logic of the system, with financial incentives. In Belgium, if you transform an existing building into housing, the VAT goes from 21% to 6%. So as a developer, you gain the 15%. It's an incentive. It's a financial incentive, and that is one of the reasons why in Belgium we do so much adaptive reuse. Why we transform so many buildings.
Do you think the world would be better off if it were collectively a bit more like Belgium?
No, I'm just giving. Well, yes, depends.
No, it can be yes. The answer can be yes.
Depends.
There's nothing wrong with being Belgian.
Yeah.
No, depends. But I'm just giving the examples that I know. This is a very simple thing that you can do to start somewhere, And this is something because this is a place where I think everyone here is looking for all kinds of solutions, and we will all hope for disasters. But then maybe there are also some things that we can that we can do. I think for you, COVID was way too. I mean, this virus was too mild, right? It would have been much better.
Well, no, I wasn't very happy with COVID at all. I mean, so it's very depressing.
No, but it's very sad that we have to talk about disasters at a
But it's the reality of history of man, a little bit,
So I'm sorry, I think you wanted us to be more optimistic, but I guess the grand strategy seems to be that we contribute more to the climate warming, and then the disasters happen, and then maybe by dealing with the disasters, we also kind of alleviate also the problem of housing.
Maybe.
Is there a report of this conference? that will stay in history. A press release. No, but I think there are many things we can do, and if Reinier, after everything he said, if he on Monday he goes to work and he wants to work, I mean, it's a reason enough. I mean, no, I mean, you keep on.
No, but I'm acutely aware of the fact that the drastic isn't always the response to everything, and the fact that I'm somewhat pessimistic about mitigating measures doesn't mean we shouldn't engage to them. It's just a question whether focusing on them alone is enough and gets you to the promised land. I think there has to be some sort of a plan B. Nature is quite interesting. We all do this in the name of protecting nature. Nature doesn't care.
Yeah.
If mankind is extinguished tomorrow, nature will continue. Mother nature is a brutal bitch, as somebody wrote. So in that sense, it is about it's a very acute form of self-interest, and I'm very, very optimistic about mankind's ability to act in its own self-interest. It just needs an enormous amount of pressure to forego other forms of self-interest before it becomes a priority. I think it's acknowledged widely that it is a massive problem. I just think, and a priority is just not of a priority enough. There are other compelling priorities which continue to be catered to in the way of this thing. And there, I think, negative predictions and warnings have a function of, in a way, upping the thing on the list of priorities. Strategic rhetorical exaggeration does serve a small purpose sometime.
Unless the measures that are taken are the wrong ones.
Yeah,
it bothers me a lot. I mean, all this, in the name of sustainability, all the measures that are being taken, which are next to the point, like
towels.
Instead of looking at insulating, building perfectly insulated, state-of-the-art buildings in the middle of nowhere, instead of focusing on, for instance, what if we don't demolish anymore? Not realizing that there is so much CO2 embedded in the existing buildings, and I talk to politicians on a high level, on a European level, who are not aware of the fact that there is CO2. We consumed energy to build, so maybe it's better not to demolish and consume something new. And they say, no, we have to demolish all these old buildings which are not insulated, and we have to build very performant new buildings in wood.
Very true. I mean, there is so much grandstanding, I think, for all sorts of reasons. You have perfectly ecological homes built in the middle of nowhere, and then you have a road towards it, and you emit when you get to there. Then you get an electric car. You don't emit anymore, but the energy is fueled by a coal plant down the road. I mean, that is what is continued. The whole cult of building everything in wood today in the name of sustainability, that is quite silly, because just imagine that if we were to build everything we currently build in concrete or reinforced concrete in timber, that would require a forest about 3 times the size of Argentina, which would not be operational until 2064. There isn't simply enough timber in the world to cater to even 2% of all built production. There is, an architecture in the end, I think it isn't an ideological discipline per se. I think architecture is a marvel of the operational. I think what architects always do very good is that they find somehow a productive way out of the most compromised situations by not being moralistic, by not being totalizing in their statement, but making ends work. And there I have a certain amount of faith that more prudent things can be done than a categorical conversion to timber, which won't get us anywhere, for example.
I see. And Anneli.
From the point of view of geographer, there is also, you can see the spatial mismatch as well, like where do you have a lot of oversupply of empty dwellings, there are no people. And that's one of the core issues, that actually in those places or cities where you have this very high demand for using the new land and then building new structures, there are not so many like vacant buildings that you can reuse. But yeah, that's why one should start even from the level of seeing this settlement like pattern systems, like where do we actually see people living in the future? Do we see everybody in Estonian context to come to Tallinn and in this region? And then it would be not sustainable at all from the environmental point of view. There is like no environment anymore to live. So that's kind of not the problem of architecture, of course, but definitely very important. But since we are already here, we need housing, affordable housing, mostly in this area here, then we can't avoid totally like having these new neighborhoods as well. But how to build these new neighborhoods and how compact and environmentally sustainable they are, there are definitely possibilities for better regulations and better envisioning, and also together with architects, like what kind of environmental friendly solutions would work from the energy efficiency point of view and accessibility point of view. Do people have to commute like long distances, or do we have the relevant services in the location? So it's a kind of planning the neighborhoods, not the buildings per se. And here the architects should come together with the other visionaries. And new solutions and community-based solutions would probably serve the future better.
Okay, thanks. Maybe let's go and eat. Thank you.
Positive note.
Before we go, I would like to remind you that we agreed on a shorter lunch break, so we can actually take 1 or 2 questions from Slido if you still agree with that previous vote, of course. Those of you who don't will obviously stand up and go ahead to lunch. But how is it... dramatic again. How is it possible that we will destroy the world and inhabitants before destroying the economic system? Should this be taught in schools? Is the first question.
There is a book, or there's Mark Fisher, I think. He wrote, "We will see the end of the world before we'll see the end of capitalism." So I think it is being taught in schools.
Which deregulations or regulations are most effective and which are most ineffective, in your opinion, to drive the affordability agenda? Who wants to take that?
It's money. It's financial incentives. Unfortunately, it's playing in the same logic.
But which are most ineffective then?
Ineffective.
Do you want to take this?
That's a broad question. I think, can't probably generalize it in such a way. There are the context specifics comes into play. Like, I don't know. Regulations as such are good, but you probably couldn't go too far.
Maybe it's again money, but put into the wrong thing. It's the wrong measure, the wrong financial incentive, as we see so many. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, I studied law before I switched over to philosophy, and one of my teachers in this faculty basically explained to us that when you have rights, for example, right to affordable living, then for that right to have any sense, you also have to have obligations. And if no one has the obligation and there is only rights, then this right is only declarational. So I guess these rights without obligations are one of the things that don't usually work. Well, they are nice to have a nice conscience, but usually they're not really effective.
I know that I'm transferring the problem, but shouldn't we then have a little bit of hope in the young generation?
There's always hope for the young generation.
No, in them, that they will, in them, because they have no access to housing. They are left with nothing, basically, So they have no choice but find a solution.
Build a ship.
Good.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the panel. Thank you so much.